Hello everyone, Fred here. In this installment of TPP Dynamite, I'm going to be reviewing episode 3 of CSI Vegas' season 2, Story of a Gun. First things first though, if you haven't already, let me encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I'm an author of adult and young adult mystery novels. To date, I have released 3 books, The Women in White, The Lethal List, and most recently, Textbook Murder. All of them are on sale now, and there are purchase links in my video description below. With that in mind, and without further ado, welcome to my spoiler-filled review of CSI Vegas Season 2, Episode 3, Story of a Gun. So the episode opens as several teenagers crash their car in an abandoned town, only to realize that there's another crashed vehicle nearby with a dead woman slumped over the steering wheel. Instead of calling the cops, however, one of the kids decides to Instagram live the whole moment, which annoys one of his friends. Welcome to Gen Z, everybody. Josh Folsom is surprised when he gets a call from his friend Trey, the same guy who helped him out last episode with identifying a car that might have transported the body of Catherine's friend Grace while he's in the middle of locker room sex with his girlfriend, Detective Serena Chavez. Josh ignores the call, Serena gets called into work, then Josh himself gets called into work. Serena and Josh show up together at the car crash scene that the Gen Z kids found earlier, and Max makes clear to Josh that she knows that he and Serena are dating. Josh pleads the fifth, both on the Serena situation and his helping out Catherine. Max goes on to explain that the victim is Mindy Downs and that the witness saw a third car speeding away from the crime scene. There's a bunch of cash scattered around the road, cash that looks like it belonged to Mindy. And further examination of Mindy's body reveals that she was shot before her car crash. Serena and Catherine test Mindy's husband for gunshot residue. When they find none on him, they rule him out as a suspect. Both he and his sister-in-law Amy deny knowing why Mindy was leaving town. Josh visits the medical examiner Sonia Nikolaevich, and they discover a green substance on the bullet that hit Mindy. Bo identifies the substance as polypropylene. Meanwhile, Jay Park comments to Ali Rajan on how weird it is that she's working with Serena now, given how Serena and Josh are dating. Thankfully, Ali doesn't want to hear any more of his commentary on the matter, so we the viewers don't have to either. Trey, annoyed by how Josh hasn't responded to his call, shows up at the crime lab to tell Josh that his truck was filled with weasels as some sort of a prank, and that he wants Josh to help him identify the person who did the deed by analyzing a fingerprint that said person left behind. Trey meets Ali in the process of talking with Josh, and he lets slip to her that Josh has told him plenty about her. Trey also tells Josh that his mother has finally gotten out of custody. Once Trey is gone, Josh debates whether to help Trey, and he tells Ali that Trey is always working an angle and always getting into trouble. Ali convinces Josh to help Trey out this one time on the basis of their friendship. Max and Serena confront Mindy's husband with evidence indicating that he crashed into Mindy's car on the night of her accident. He admits that he did hit her car on the night that she died. It turns out that Mindy had packed a bag, taken some cash, and left his home to go and stay with her mom for a while. Mindy was shot on the road while she was leaving, however, and in her last moments of life, she called her husband to ask for his help. He didn't get the voicemail until after Mindy was already dead, and when he drove to her location to help her, he accidentally crashed into her car. When he realized that she was dead, he fled the scene and never called 911 because he didn't want to look like a suspect. Serena goes off on the husband, accusing him of murdering Mindy because Mindy was leaving him. His story admittedly does sound very crazy and almost too convenient, but he submits Mindy's voicemail to prove that he's telling the truth. Ali, Josh, and Serena later make a reconstruction of Mindy's road trip and realize that Mindy was shot from a very long distance away, from her own neighborhood and probably by someone with Army sniper accuracy. The CSIs and Serena go looking in that neighborhood for anyone who might have heard the gunshot. Bo sees a balloon in the area that was grazed by a second shot. The CSIs continue a search of the area for hours before Max finds some shell casings in a field behind a trailer park. Unfortunately, an obscured assailant shows up, knocks Max out, and takes the casings before she can. Max is taken to the hospital and everyone takes her injury very personally, especially Josh, who feels very guilty because he was instead at the office trying to identify the person who pranked Trey and thinks that if he had been backing Max up in the field instead of doing that, then things may have gone differently for her. Catherine calms Josh down before telling him that he is now the lead CSI on this case. Josh still feels bad, but he rises quickly to the occasion. It turns out that Max was able to hide one of the casings before they were all taken. Allie and Jay trace it to a rifle registered to one of Mindy's neighbors. Said neighbor claims that her gun was stolen years earlier, and she also claims that Mindy's husband crashed a party of hers at which the rifle went missing. Josh, who's still very frustrated with himself, confirms that Mindy's killer is left-handed. Meanwhile, Bo manages to brilliantly uncover evidence that leads the CSIs to realize that the rifle that they want is buried beneath a fresh spate of concrete in Mindy's neighborhood. Catherine finds Josh at the lab and tells him that Max is going to be fine. Josh promises to visit Max in the hospital as soon as he catches the person who attacked her. He's busy working on collecting evidence from the rifle, and soon enough he realizes that the fatal shot was fired upward. Since snipers don't fire up to hit their targets, Josh and Catherine realize that Mindy's death was not planned but was a complete accident, which only leaves one more question. Who attacked Max and why? Allie recovers evidence from the rifle that causes the CSIs to realize that the grandson of Mindy's lady neighbor who owned the rifle fired the gun several times in order to scare some bullies away when they antagonized him. One of those shots, tragically enough, hit and killed Mindy on the night of her death. The CSIs also find more evidence, a pair of the grandmother's jeans with fresh concrete on them, to prove that the grandmother buried the rifle in cement. She knew what her grandson did and she decided to protect him because he had accidentally caused Mindy's death. She lied about having lost the rifle to theft. She intentionally tried to make Mindy's husband look responsible for the theft of the rifle. She hid the rifle to protect her grandson, and she hit Max and stole the shell casings to completely cover her tracks and those of her grandson. The woman and her grandson are both arrested. Mindy's husband and sister are on hand to watch, but there's little comfort for them in knowing that Mindy's death was just a tragic coincidence. The husband tells Serena that he wants an apology for how she treated him. Serena just explodes at him instead, telling him that it is his fault that Mindy died, that Mindy was leaving him, and that he accordingly put her in the path of the bullet that killed her. Which makes no sense at all, but hey, it would hardly be a CSI show if the main cast didn't ruin at least one innocent victim's life and later issue some sort of non-apology to justify it after the deed. Josh meets Trey later at night. Josh reasons pretty fast that Trey is up to no good and that there may be shady and undisclosed reasons for why Trey wants an identification on the fingerprint that he gave Josh for analysis earlier. So Josh refuses to help Trey any further or even give him the name of the guy who supposedly messed with his trunk. Trey isn't happy at all about it, and it seems like things have begun to sour between the two of them. Josh doesn't let it get to him though. Once he's done with Trey, he visits Max in the hospital. He apologizes to her and brings her a burger and fries for dinner. They have a tearful but sweet little bonding session. The end. So here are my thoughts. Despite this episode's very moving personal tone, a tone revolving around the sweet mother-son vibe between Max and Josh, as well as the CSI's investigation into who attacked one of their own. I honestly did not like this episode very much. The mystery started strong, but it just failed to hold my interest for long. It became pretty clear pretty fast to me that Mindy's husband and sister were too obvious of suspects to be guilty. I also realized pretty early on that Mindy wasn't into anything that would have drawn the ire of a sniper, at which point I started to suspect that her death was just a tragic accident. And when that happened, I basically checked out of the show. I've been watching CSI series, various CSI television series for over 10 years now, and I have never liked the episodes that start off looking like murders but turn out to be accidents or mistakes. They always feel like cheap cop-outs to me, and they always tend to end on the same sad note with heartbroken people who have to adjust to the new normal in a world where their loved ones died essentially for no reason. That whole trope was made all the worse in this episode because the accidental death was the only investigation. There was no second, more interesting secondary case to take my mind off of the uninteresting primary. Even the mystery behind Grace's disappearance seemed to have been on back burner this time around. In my review of last episode, I said that I don't like Allie as a character and that I tend to dislike episodes that focus on her. Well, I honestly am starting to dislike Serena Chavez even more, if that's possible. Ever since the beginning, Serena has come off to me as cold, disrespectful to persons of interest, and generally just all around uninteresting. I get that part of this is probably just her doing her job. I mean, every good detective has learned how to practice a certain professional distance from the cases and the people whom they investigate. That's understandable, but with Serena, it always has just felt so unnecessary. This week, she goes off more than once on Mindy's grieving husband, going so far as to accuse him of Mindy's murder. When she realizes that she was wrong and that Mindy's death was random, she doesn't back down or apologize. She still blames the grieving husband for Mindy's death by virtue of the fact that Mindy was leaving him when she got shot. Now yeah, on the one hand, the husband should have called the cops when he found his wife shot dead in a crashed car. But on the other hand, his explanation for why he didn't do that is not implausible. Everyone from here to Australia knows that the husband is always the first suspect when a wife is murdered, no matter what he says. The husband in this episode knew that he wasn't guilty, that his wife was beyond saving, and that someone was going to eventually find her and call it in. He just didn't want to be there when it happened. And the fact that Serena automatically accuses him of being what was wrong in his marriage and the direct reason for why his wife died just reeked of insensitivity and unnecessary cruelty on Serena's part. I get that this is a CSI show and that CSI shows have always had a tendency to portray persons of interest in the worst light possible and to view the rights of citizens as basically annoying impediments to investigations. In point of fact, that's exactly what Allie did with Gene Farrow in last episode. But Allie at least apologized when she realized that she'd gotten it wrong. Serena, meanwhile, just doubled down on rubbing salt in the wound of a grieving widower. Just yuck. I am seriously starting to not like her, and honestly right now I really wouldn't be too broken up about it if she was just killed off this season. The drama between Trey and Josh kind of left me scratching my head. On the one hand, I suspect that the subplot was included as the writer's way of seeding a little more of Josh's backstory into the series and possibly teasing that it's going to come more so into play during this season. It's already been implied that Josh is from the wrong side of the tracks, that he grew up without a dad in the home, that he spent time in foster care possibly because of a negligent mom, and that he's got some unsavory friends. During this episode, we learn that his mom has been in prison and just got out. So we're left to wonder when and if she and Josh will have the sort of reckoning that basically has to happen on a show like this. On the other hand though, Josh's immediate resistance to helping Trey figure out who vandalized his car seemed kind of odd, especially considering that just last episode, Josh was going to Trey for favors that he expected Trey to use his own job to get for him. It felt kind of odd that Josh sees doing a favor in return as being too much of a risk. Yeah, I understand that Trey has only been in 2 episodes so far, and that Josh probably knows him better than we the viewers do, but still, it just didn't sit well with me, all things considered. Okay, down to brass tacks. This was another less than spectacular episode of CSI Vegas that still does tug at the heartstrings with its focus on the sweet little relationship between Max and Josh, and that also makes some interesting strides in setting up more of Josh's interesting backstory. I give CSI Vegas Season 2, Episode 3, Story of a Gun, 2.5 Cronuts out of 5. At any rate, tell me what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, click subscribe, and please ring that bell. So long.